Yeah, I like that a lot. I like that a lot. I think those questions, especially that one you mentioned, or there's so much you mentioned there, but that question about if I get this role, where do I end up? Where do people that have done this previously go? I think that's a really great question. And I think what you were saying about sitting down with people for coffee, I think is really important too, especially if you don't necessarily have to know them before reaching out either. And I think that's likely something that you've done too, is reaching out to people who work there. Maybe, like you said, you have just
Yeah.
mutual connections with them. Lots of people, especially like, will just happily sit down, even if it's nowadays you can just tee up a half an hour call like very easily, and most
Yeah.
people will slot you into their schedule like
Yeah.
really easily. So yeah, I think that's really great advice.
Yeah. It sort of amazes me how little that happens in
Mm.
Australia, right? Where students or young grads sort of reaching out to folks and asking for coffee to pick their brains, like that. It surprises me how little that happens in the states. It's almost a regular thing. You'll get your alumni or other folks just reaching out to you, and it happens almost every other day. Whereas here, I don't know. I don't think that's caught on yet. I also think like in the states, there's a stronger like college alumni culture. So if you went to a certain university, you'll actively reach out to all of the folks that went to that university, regardless of where they are now, and sort of reach out and introduce yourself to them. Whereas in Australia, it doesn't really happen. It might be because there are just fewer universities in Australia compared to the States. And people don't really have that sort of, not patriotism, but like feeling of like belonging for their universities. I don't think that sort of happens in Australia, right?
Mm.
Yeah, but definitely, if you're a young student listening to this, and then you're like, "Look, I'm applying to this company, and there are folks there that I have mutual connections with, or have gone to the same university that I've gone to." Flick them an email. The worst case, like they just leave you on red, and that's it. Like they don't respond. But that's the worst case. You haven't lost anything. The best case scenario is that you have a really engaging conversation with them, and whether they steer you towards the role or away from it, you'll learn something about the role that you probably wouldn't have known about, and save you potentially a mistake. So yeah, I think that's something that I would strongly advise people to do.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. And it's really cool, even from that perspective of reaching out for certain roles that you want to do, or even just mentorship in the if you want to improve at the current role you're doing as well. I think that's really big. And yeah, I think
Yeah,
like because it is so underutilized, like you said, in Australia, and I agree that like many people don't consider doing this. There's so much more value to get out of it because the people you are reaching out to don't usually get things like this, and they're more than happy to help. So I think it's important that you utilize that,
yeah.
while it's still something that is uncommon.